Ever since I was little, I've always been the type of kid who's been like public speaking and doing all of that. Being a really good student and everything, I was always like the kid that was put to give the huge speeches in front of people, so that's always something I've been used to. This time, an opportunity arose, and as you know, Spanish Day was coming, so we were gonna do a couple activities for the day. One of the activities, they were all like competitions, but one of them was a speech competition, and I was so excited. There were 3 competitions actually the high school was competing in. So you had like the writing competition for like spelling mistakes, stuff like that, something like that, and then we had the poem competition, and we also had the speech competition. So the rules were basically that only one person from each grade could like go through each of these categories. So like that would mean 3 people from my grade, 3 people from 9th grade. So we were gonna compete and we were gonna see if we won or something. Well, I was so excited for the speech competition, and unlike the other 2 competitions where we had to do like a little bit of an exam to determine who would be the one competing, say, in writing, or who would be the one competing in poems. For the poems, actually, I remember that they had to make like a poem and they had to learn it and they had to say it in front of the class to determine who would be the one actually competing in the stage and everything. Well, for the speech competition, it was a bit different because the teacher, the Spanish teacher, she was like, all right, so I have like 2 people in mind, which was a friend of mine and me. We're both the best students in the grade, and I would say the best students overall in the school. We were amazing students. So she was like, I'm in between her or me, and I wanted that spot. So I was like, can I please do the speech competition thingy? And she was like, oh yeah, you can. She said she had the other girl, she wanted her to compete in poems, so she said you can have the role. And I was like, all right. So the thing is, I'm competing in the speech competition, and I said and I was warned that I had a lot of tough competition. That was a bit nerve-wracking to me because I like competition. I love competition, but whenever I hear that I have tough competition, I just go all out. Like, I try to do my best, and I never ever lose. So I wasn't gonna leave this as an opportunity to lose. I never lose. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is so nerve-wracking. I'm gonna have to do a little speech like in front of the whole school. So the rules for the speech were that it couldn't be longer than 5 minutes, so it only had to be like 5 minutes. And I would have to write the speech on my own. I could not use anybody else's speech or like a pre-written speech. I had to write the speech on my own, and I had to go say it in front of like the whole school in the day of the language. Okay, so the thing is that it's like I've had a lot of homework those past few weeks, and I remember I was competing against 7th, 8th, 10th and 11th grade. I was the representative from 9th grade. Yeah, it was 4 other people who I was competing against, and there was only 2nd place and 1st place, and only 1st place got a medal. So the thing is, those past few weeks had been very busy for me because I had a lot of homework, and it had been different for the other grades because they had less homework than us, but for us it was like a very busy week, very busy few weeks. So the week before the competition, I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't written this speech, and then my teacher says, every other representative from the other grades have already sent the speech and you haven't sent anything. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like super laid back and I should have done this before, right? So I'm like, okay, let me try to do the speech. And I looked for a lot of inspiration. Actually, my teacher gave me my topic, and she said that the topic that I had for me personally was the beauty of letters in Spanish, which I was like, what am I gonna write for that? I think the other grades got different topics, I think, because when I heard the speeches, actually, they were talking about a bunch of different things. So I was like, what am I actually gonna say, you know? And I started looking for inspiration and everything, and it took a long time to write that speech. I swear, it was like 10 hours writing in my computer. It was insane. I remember I had only finished like half of the speech, and I sent it to my teacher, and she was like, wow, it It's so great. I love it, and it's actually the best one. She said that, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's the best one? What do you mean? Because I was aware that the other people who were competing against me were very good. And she said, but like, please don't tell anybody that I said that yours was the best one. But yeah, so I actually finished the speech, right? And I finished it like 4 days before the competition. So it was very, very close to the deadline. So I go ahead and I start practicing my speech, and I had to learn it too, because like you could go with your paper, but it wouldn't have like the same impact. Like you could be reading, but it just wouldn't feel right. So I wanted to learn it. So I started like learning it like 3 days before I started practicing and everything, and I was very, very nervous. So the day before the competition, I remember I was struggling in a little section, and I was so nervous for the next day. So then finally the competition day is here, and I am so nervous. I am so insanely nervous. I'm like, why did I even apply to participate in this? Why did I do that? And then it was finally time for us to go. I sort of saw the speeches from my other competition, like I just slightly saw them, and like they brought their papers and everything, right? And I was like, well, it doesn't look that bad. I think I was scared a bit. People scared me a bit too much, I think, because when I saw their speeches, they weren't like masterpieces. Not that I'm saying that mine was a masterpiece, but they weren't as tough as I thought they would be. So finally we go to the speech thingy, and I stand up there, and they first called the 7th grade one. So we were all like sitting down in like little chairs beside the stage, and they call 7th grade, and he says his speech and everything. Then they call 8th grade, and she says her speech. And I remember that 7th grade, the boy looked like he wanted to cry. not to say anything. And then the 8th grade girl, she was like good, I guess. She was very good, I think, but she was mostly reading, and she had like a very monotone tone to her voice, so it didn't sound like it had any emotion to it. Plus, both of these kids, they had just been standing on the podium where you put like the speech thingy. I was like, well, because I had read the page of the things they were going to be evaluating, I was like, okay, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to do everything that the page said that they were evaluating, because they were evaluating many things like the tone of your voice, the content of the speech, the way you walked on stage and everything, stage presence and stuff, you know. So I went and I ignored all the other 2 kids that went to the podium. I was like, I'm gonna do different than them. So I'm gonna walk around the stage and I'm gonna look people in the eyes. And it was very nerve-wracking. So I start my speech and everything's good. Everything's great. People are observing. I feel like they weren't distracted compared to the other 2 kids' speeches. So I was like talking and talking and talking. And then there comes this part in the middle where I just kind of like, I just freeze on stage. It was awful. So I freeze. Everything was going good, and then I froze for like 5 seconds. But then I was like, well, whatever, screw it, you know? Because I already did a mistake, I'm just gonna keep on going. So I grabbed my paper, I slightly read the part that I kept forgetting. I said the part, and then I continued and went on and on and on, and I added more emotion and everything, and I looked people in the eyes because the nerves in me were completely gone after doing that mistake. So I was just like saying everything. It was excellent. And then at the end, I made sure that I left on a high note, because I was like, maybe if I do a great ending, they would forget my terrible mistake in the middle. So I just did it on a high note, and everybody clapped. It was so great. I loved it. But the thing is that I was still like, what if I don't win? Because, you know, the other 2 kids that were going after me were the older ones, which is 10th and 11th grade. So I was like, oh my gosh, what if I don't win? So 10th grade and 8th grade were the 2 grades that I was warned the most about. I was told that they were very tough competition. I already saw 8th grade, so I was like, maybe I have a bit of competition there, but I don't think that much. But I was gonna see 10th grade now, and the 10th grader kid goes up there and he starts talking and stuff, and he didn't bring a paper, he just like kind of like improvised. But they said that he was very good at improvisation and everything like that. But still, I feel like he got nervous, because I don't know, his speech was a bit all over the place. I don't really know. It was kind of like confusing, I guess. And then the 11th grade kid, it was actually a bit funny, because her speech, it got like like lost. Like she lost it, so she had to write a brand new one right that morning. So she was like, oh my gosh, whatever. So she just did her speech and everything, and then finally we're done with all of that, and then we continued the event after the speeches and everything while they were evaluating our scores. And I remember one of like the 8th graders told me that the teacher, the Spanish teacher, she said, oh my gosh, she stole the show. I stole the show. That just boosts my ego, I guess. Okay, so finally we go to like the award ceremony thingy that we did at the end of the event, and they start calling out the people who participated in the speech, and then they were like, second place goes to, and it was the 8th grader girl, and then first place, it went to me. I cannot believe that. Like, I could believe that because I knew that I did the best speech, but oh my gosh, it was still like, oh my gosh, they chose me. It was so funny. But I got a medal and I got a book and I got like a certificate and everything. Actually, not to mention, that month I had won 3 competitions in total. The month of April, I had won my science fair. Even though we won 3rd place, we were the only group to classify from 9th grade. And then I had won also the spelling bee that same week on Monday, and then on Friday I had actually won the speech competition. So it was an insane week for me, and I was just really proud of myself, and I think that just boosted my love for public speaking. So I don't know if you guys like public speaking, because I feel like a lot of people are like afraid of public speaking. I just want to hear you guys' opinion, and if you've ever had to do a lot of public speaking, because I know that personally teachers love putting me in public speaking and I don't really know why.